I'll bring the Butte-Silver Bow Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Can we please have a roll call?
1 presiding, 11 present, 0 absent.
Thank you. Commissioner Walker, would you please lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on tonight's agenda is any public comment on any items that are on the agenda. I'm sure that there's a few people out there that want to talk about number 8, I believe, regarding the EPA. The only thing that I would mention on that is everyone is welcome, obviously, to give public comment. We still would ask if you feel strongly enough about your position, please email or contact the EPA directly and make sure those comments go directly to them. So at this time, any public comment on any items on the agenda. If you could, at the bottom of the microphone, there's a button to turn on, Mr. Patrice.
Yep.
If you would just state your name and address for the record and the communication that you're referring to.
Don Patrice, 2804 White Boulevard, Butte, Montana. In regard to 2025-18. Commissioners, thank you for segregating communication 2025-18 from the consent agenda and holding in abeyance in the Committee of the Whole for public review and comment. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Council of Commissioners on behalf of the Butte Watchdogs for Social and Environmental Justice, a Montana nonprofit based here in Butte. First, thank you for your willingness to pause, listen to the people, and modify the proposed Butte-Silver Bow comment on the Environmental Protection Agency's proposed lead abatement plan for Butte prior to submitting it to the EPA. Had you concurred with communication 2025-18 and placed it on file, you would have been adopting a comment to EPA on their lead abatement plan that did not reflect or articulate the proper concern for the citizens of Butte. Instead, it focused on financial impacts related to British Petroleum and the operational issues of a county department. The complex issues involved in EPA's proposed lead abatement plan for Butte require public input and should foremost consider the needs of the people of Butte. We urge you, as a policy-setting body of the Butte-Silver Bow government, to consider a different approach than the proposed comment that was brought before you. As watchdogs, our primary goal is protection of the health and safety, current and future generations of people with specific focus on children, which we are sure is your goal as well. We believe comments from local government should put those concerns at the forefront of comments rather than cluttering the comment with questions about costs of British Petroleum and impacts on local government department. As submitted to you, human health is glossed over in the document. Human health should be the driver of your focus and comments rather than economic considerations for settling defendants, mostly BP, although BSB is also a settling defendant. We encourage you to adopt such an approach in your comment to take firm positions that make the health of the people of Butte your primary concern. The Montana Constitution gives the people of Montana a very strong and specific right to a clean and healthful environment and requires government and the people to seek to improve the environment. Excuse me. Within that, limiting exposure to toxins here in Butte or by remediating in a timely manner should be stated as the first priority in the BSB comment to EPA. Allowing convenience or cost to settling defendants to dictate the pace at which those rights are ensured is tantamount to trading dollars in exchange for poisoning people. Yes, the pace is the case. The EPA's proposal to take up to 25 years to complete the testing and cleanup is totally unacceptable. Who in their right mind would propose that? And who in their right mind would accept that? You, as representatives of the people, should outright reject that suggestion in the BSB comment, in your comment state it strongly and clearly. Not 25 years, not 20 years, not 15 years, not 10 years, but single-digit years. Our children and grandchildren, excuse me, are already facing this lead poisoning danger. We cannot allow it to pass on to any succeeding generation. In addition to the points made above, here are some specific points to consider putting in your comments to EPA to avoid being on the wrong side of the story, of history. Superfund law does not grant any specific contractor the right or responsibility to conduct remedial actions on a Superfund site. That includes BSB. The responsibility legally and financially belongs to BP, and they have the resources to do it right and do it rapidly with financial assurances secured by EPA. Suggesting in any form that EPA ought to allow BP to limit itself to one contractor, even if that is BSB, would be a tragic error. Most, if not all, Superfund sites involve the use of contractors, not government, to expediently address serious health issues like lead from smelting in order to protect public health. The assertion or the assumption in the draft BSB comment letter that BSB conduct all the remedial activities of the lead testing and abatement is a self-imposed limitation that can only work to the detriment of the Butte citizens. The current staffing level of the Superfund Department should continue to address the many responsibilities voluntarily agreed to by this body in the consent decree for BPSOU. But this lead testing and cleanup should be done as fast as possible, not driven by the allure of creating a few more local government jobs. Number two, although local government lacks expertise to comment on potential scientific errors in methodology, that doesn't mean such errors don't exist. The much improved lead standard of 175 parts per million should be supported and stated strongly and specifically. However, references by BSB to continuing the biomonitoring program and health studies should be withheld due to conflicts of interest and methodology raised by experts in terms of how such things have been conducted in the past. Those studies are led by BP's consultant, Ramboll. Ramboll also submitted comments to EPA on behalf of a group of industrial polluters protesting the EPA proposal to have a rule for revisiting soil lead standards. And Ramboll is advocating on behalf of its industrial clients when it comes to Butte lead cleanup. Given that history with Ramboll, BSB should remove references to the continuation of biomonitoring and health studies, or specifically recommend that any such studies being done moving forward cannot be conducted by contractors who are connected to BP. Number three, financial resources coming to local government for lead testing and abatement are outside of the EPA's authority. Financial arrangements between Butte-Silver Bowl and British Petroleum are outside of CERCLA and remain a mystery to many in our community, including people who have requested accessible documents and been denied. It is entirely inappropriate to expect the federal government to direct financial resources that are the responsibility of a foreign corporation under the consent decree to be focused on our local government instead of being spent in the most expedient way to accomplish lead testing and cleanup. Number four, removal of soils and replacement is not the only abatement technology available. Focusing comments on that presumption may limit the ability to properly protect the people of Butte when it comes to remediation. Issues like waste repository capacity are concerns of EPA, but to this point ignore the availability of larger repositories outside our urban core, like the opportunity ponds for disposition of the materials that are related to other portions of remedial action conducted by British Petroleum in addition to the lead soil waste. Further, we encourage the Council of Commissioners to direct departments to provide full transparency and accessible information for the public. Omaha, Nebraska, for instance, which hosts data, provides easily available metrics for anyone to access. Additionally, individual parcels are updated to include history of sampling results, eligibility, and correspondence relative to the property and publicly available. A random example of a home in Omaha remediated prior to Butte's RMAP program is, and there's a link to go to. Also, please note the pace of remediation per year in Omaha for comparison. In summary, local government made a choice to accept the legal role of a settling defendant in 2020 and accepted a covenant not to sue as a part of that decision. Butte-Silver was formally charged as a potentially responsible party at the time of the lodging of the consent decree with the federal court, which can be found in the administrative record. Real or perceived, fears of what could fall on taxpayers are behind us, and the days of worrying about costs of British Petroleum should be in the past. We ask BSB to submit comments focused not on the financing of lead testing and abatement, the sole responsibility of British Petroleum, but on the safety of the community in a timely fashion as done in other communities in the United States. The long and sordid history of making deals regarding cleanup always comes with trade-offs. The health and safety of our citizens should never be sacrificed again. As you direct the county staff to redraft comment to EPA, proceed with your conscience as a guide and put the needs of the people first. Thank you for your time and opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Patrice.
I have copies also for commissioners as well.
Thank you. You can leave those with the clerk. Is there any other public comment on any items on tonight's agenda? I'll give you a second to, oh, okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's still on.
I
You guys
believe
got
so.
it?
Yes.
It was Bill Foley, 804 Zerelda Street, speaking on 2025-18. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see some old faces back and some new faces that were elected. Congratulations. I know you guys are here doing this for the right reason. It was great to see that the EPA decided to finally drop the acceptable levels of lead in Butte. However, it is disheartening to see that Butte-Silver Bow responded to this major decision by continuing to focus on protecting the bottom line for British Petroleum instead of protecting our children. That is exactly what the letter or memo drafted as the official comment from BSB did. BP is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The company has more than enough money to pay for the cleanup of the mess that it is responsible for. It is too late for everyone in this room. We've already likely been exposed to lead, and many of us have damage from it, whether we know it or not. It is probably too late for the children of Butte, who are the most vulnerable to lead poisoning. If we stand by as the EPA allows BP to take up to 25 years or potentially longer, depending on the language way you read it, then it will be too late for generations of children to come. It is important that as citizens that we express our concerns to the EPA during this time of the comment period. The voice of the policy-setting body of our local government, however, packs a much larger punch. You were elected to represent the people of Butte and Silver Bow County. The people, as you know, want the poisoning of the children to stop, and they don't want to wait 25 years for it to stop. Please be forceful in your comments. Demand that the EPA ensures that BP spares no expense to make sure the cleanup is closer to 5 years than 25 years. Otherwise, our government will continue to be culpable in the poisoning of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Is there any other public comment on any item that's on tonight's agenda? Good evening, Evan. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Evan Barrett. I live at 807 West Silver Street on the Butte Hill. I want to comment on Communication 2025-18. I want to very much thank you as a council and the local government in making the opportunity available, the time available for public comment. We've barely gotten the word out and to the public that this opportunity this week and 2 weeks from now is available, so they can comment on how Butte-Silver Bow ought to address EPA when it comes to this lead abatement cleanup plan. As I said last week, the comments were directed in the right direction, but I believe firmly that they need to be toughened up, made more sharp, made more clear. I strongly believe the document, and I will submit some written stuff on this, the written document remove this bunch of questions that are asked of EPA, and I urge the local government to pull those questions out, put them in a memo, an email to EPA, and ask them now, and see if you get some answers. Instead of assuming they won't answer, see if they won't answer. But you should expect them to answer, because how can you possibly put something together without them revealing what the plan means? Now, that being said, by removing the questions and asking them in a side memo, it gives a chance for the comment of Butte-Silver to be clear and crisp and concise and to the point. And to the point, particularly about the timeliness of this. As Moose noted in his comment, which, by the way, was sent to you online as well through your commissioner's email, that we do need to say it cleanly and clearly. We don't want 25 years. We don't even want close to that. The people of Butte deserve this thing to be done rapidly. British Petroleum has deep enough pockets, as well as the legal responsibility, to do it right, and do it quickly. That's the protection Butte citizen needs. Now, there are some things that Butte-Silver was writing about in there that make really good sense as comments on behalf of the county. But they get lost in this morass of questions. The questions take away from the meaning of the whole thing. So continue to take input for the next 2 weeks. There's plenty of time for this to be dealt with, presented back to the staff, have it be brought back to the full council in early February and submitted to EPA before February 14th. So we urge you to keep the item open, held in abeyance on your agenda. We'll do our best to get people to weigh in on how Butte-Silver ought to address this. And by the way, we'll do everything we can to get everybody in Butte that has a comment to submit their comments directly to EPA, because they're the decision maker. But we all want the comments of Butte-Silver to be reflective of the attitudes of the community itself and the citizens themselves. So thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it, and we'll try to make the most of it so that we can put a great comment together to EPA on the lead abatement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Is there any other comments on any item on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I'll move to the next item on tonight's agenda, which is the report of the chair. The only thing that I want to report on today is just a clarification, just to make sure that everybody's aware of it. The Council of Commissioners is the legislative branch of the government and does not have the ability to direct county staff to do certain things. That is the executive branch where it comes to chief executive. So just so the commissioners are all aware, we can't direct staff to do a particular task in that sense. Moving on to section 1, bid openings, public hearing and or presentations. Communication 25-16, James Ouellette, ADA Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a presentation on January 15th, 2025 to provide an update on the City County of Butte-Silver self-evaluation and transition plan for 2025. I just want to remind the commissioners on this communication there's no action on this. This is simply just a presentation for Mr. Ouellette. Mr. Ouellette.
Hello. Commissioners, thank you so much for letting me present. I'm going to keep it brief, and I'll leave lots of time to answer any of your questions. So, stand by. Can we, no? Yeah, we'll work together. So just a brief overview of the ADA. The ADA was signed On July 1990, it's a civil rights law. The most important thing I always tell people when I'm doing an ADA training is to remember it's a civil rights law. So every question has to go down to, are we violating someone's civil rights at the very heart of the ADA? There are 5 titles. We deal with Title II, so everything that we talk about tonight will be within the scope of Title II, which is state and local governments. And then failure to compliance in the ADA. There's not like like with OSHA and the Department of Labor, they have inspectors that come in and inspect our buildings, inspect our programs. ADA has to be taken to court. So through either being a lawsuit, the Department of Justice, or court orders. So I'm going to share with you just a very brief, when I was hired here at as the ADA coordinator, there were some investigations open, and one of their emails that they have responded to me, I'm going to just read it real briefly to you. Given the efforts James has taken in moving the notch forward in the city's ADA compliance efforts, including the RFP ADA transition plan, as well as the steps he has already taken to address specific complaints, I anticipate closing the investigations. So right now we don't have any current open ADA investigations. This was an incredible accomplishment that we accomplished together as a team here at Butte-Silver, and one of the big things that helped us close these investigations was this transition plan. So this goes back to it. A lot of times in court, when there is a settlement, it's usually the court orders the city to make a new transition plan. So we're already ahead of the game. That's how important this document is. Here it is. I won't read it all to you, but we have to evaluate our policies, practices, and the efforts that do not meet with the requirements of the ADA. And then we have to apply a public entity shall provide an opportunity to interested persons, including individuals with disabilities, organizations, to participate in the self-evaluation plan. So part of this update tonight is to hear your comments on this. We also have groups like Ability Montana and our ADA Advisory Committee that are very committed into working with this too. Transition plan. So once this comes together, we will have a transition plan that is a readily available document. They will present it to you next January to the council. So in March 2024, an RFP went out. We selected the WT group through that process, and on July 1st, 2024, Butte-Silver entered into a contract with the WT group to conduct a comprehensive self-evaluation of Butte's program, services, activities, and our facilities. So why did we pick a consulting company? Well, it's a very big task. A consulting company provides the detailed documentation. They have engineers, they have GIS specialists, they have architects. They're a well-rounded professional company. They did Helena's transition plan. They had great things to say about working with them. So their expertise, their efficiency, and it's a third party, right? We just want to know what's happening. So and they also have lots of tools that I currently do not possess, and the time that I currently do not possess to do this. As I should make note, I am the AD coordinator, and I'm also the safety and health coordinator here too. So me conducting the transition plan was a question that this body asked me before. It would have taken me leaving behind my safety and health job, which I don't want to do because I love that job very much. So that's an example of what a transition plan looks like. So that's what you're expected to see. So we'll talk about a citation that, or where we are not in compliance, the type of correction, their recommendations for it, the cost for it, and then a phase project, because there's going to be lots of things that come out of a transition plan. So we're going to have to phase it out into about 3 phases. And how they decide the phases and the priorities, I'm going to let the slideshow say it. Yeah, I have a slide for that. So 3 things that they look for, right? They look for, was it designed to meet the standard in the first place? Was it constructed to meet the standard? And has it been maintained to meet the standard, right? So those are the 3 kind of criterion factors that they looked through within their compliance audit. These are the priorities that they put these phases kind of in. Is it easy to do? Is it a high-use site? Is it a public space, an employee space? Is it complex or costly? Is there a partner? So for maybe if it's a park, if it's a state park and a local government park, they look for that. Is it a repurposed site? Is it a historic site? Does it have any other types of other protections? And then is it compliant or is it technical and feasible, right? So sometimes in Uptown Butte, if we have a grade at 16.5% of the road, it's going to be impossible to meet that 8.33 grade for the sidewalk. So that might be a technical infeasibility, but we'll try to get as close to the standard always as possible. So what are some observations? So what have they been doing so far? So this is something that they have saw at Father Sheehan Park, where the slope was greater than 2.01%. And then there was a boulder in one of the parking stalls there. And then the signage at the animal shelter was right, but it was not at the proper height. Now, this is really great. One thing I absolutely just completely admire about Butte-Silver Bow staff, when they found out that this was happening, they did not wait till next year to fix this. They went the next day. Zane went down and fixed the sign. Sean Fredrickson, our parks director, went to that park and they moved that boulder out of the way. So a lot of these things we don't have to wait till next year to do. So as things come up, they're fixing them right on site, which was two very simple fixes. Some of our routes, so our cross slope at the Civic Center, which is important because that is our primary voting place. There's lots of standards around accessible voting places. Our slope is slightly off there. I think it's 3.8%. And then there were some gaps in our parks. And again, with our parks, so some of our accessible routes to our parks. Now, they will go through and try to make our parks as accessible as possible. We do have some really good accessible parks, which the number of parks they will explain on how many have to be in compliance. You're good? Yeah, and then again, like at our bathroom, there's no accessible stall at our library. And then the grabs bars at the original mine yard were just mounted incorrectly. So again, we do have something in place. It's just the mounting of that. So they have completed all of their physical sites, parks, and buildings of Butte-Silver Bow. They did that this summer. They were here starting in July all the way up until November, into our snowfall. And then we had an amazing community engagement event, a great turnout. I know some of the commissioners were there for that. Our chief executive was there for that. This was a really cool opportunity for people in our community to give firsthand experiences and stories on what their experiences, and that's what helps put that priority list together. Currently, they're 40% through our public right-of-way and about 50% generating our site evaluation reports. What's coming up next is their policy and program review. So interviews are going to be conducted with all of our staff, well, with department heads and with staff members, talking about the programs, services, and activities. So if someone comes in and requests a service like a document in Braille or a sign language interpreter, what is our Butte-Silver Bow policy on that? And then we have staff training. They're going to be providing us with 6 staff trainings are on different topics, communications, and then audits and putting that whole transition plan together from all their findings. The final report will be presented to this Council of Commissioners next January 2026. That's why when they sent me their update for they're a year out, I wanted to present it to you guys right away because there might not be a whole lot more updates until January 2026. But my office is always open if you have any questions. And we look like we're on time for completion. Funding. So again, this commission approved this funding, and it's a fund through 2993, so through ARPA funds. Reasons for conducting that, obviously there's the legal requirement we have to. Also, this is tied to a lot of grant funding. A lot of grant funding asked to see our current ADA transition plan. A lot of our big grants require this. It's a risk mitigation, obviously, to reduce the potential of having lawsuits. And then the moral responsibility, and being in Butte's such a great community where people take care of their neighbors and they really care about their neighbors, and everyone that we talk to about this is really on board because it's the right thing to do, especially because Butte has not only people with disabilities but also an aging community, which this will benefit their access as well. And so this photo is from our community support event. We can see We have Ability Montana there. We have people with disabilities. We have our chief executive there. This was a real large event that we had at the archives where people were able to talk openly and freely about what their experiences are, because numbers and measurements are great, but there's nothing quite as powerful as that shared lived experience. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Olet, for the presentation. I just want to thank you for your dedication to this task. This is something that is a heavy lift for anybody that is doing it, and it looks like you're doing it one bite at a time, and you're just knocking things out of the park. So nice job. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? All right. Oh, Commissioner Shea.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman, but I want to echo your sentiments. This is a big deal for Butte-Silver Bow, and I like to take the opportunity to get that on the record every time it comes up. When we were required to begin looking at a transition plan, Butte-Silver Bow didn't have the resources to do that. They didn't do that. And so we're really grateful that you have been brought on staff, that the chief executive has prioritized this in the community and made this an initiative that you are in charge of, and you're doing a great job. So I just wanted to thank you, and also to call out the chief executive for making sure it remains a priority.
Thank you, Commissioner Shea, and I would like to add to that.
Mr. Olet, hold on one second. Any other questions? All right, follow up, Mr. Olet.
Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to add to that. Yes, I'm excited and I love working here and I love my job a lot. I'm very grateful. But the opportunity that Chief Executive Gallagher did when he brought me to his office and told me to clean up this process, and I could not have done it without his support, without the support of Karen Burns and all of Butte-Silver Bow's hard workers, our Public Works Department, our commissioners, and then obviously Ability Montana and our ADA Advisory Committee. This is a perfect example of how great this community is and how amazing it is when we all come together to work on this task for the greater good. So it's an absolutely privilege and an honor to be doing this. So thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have questions or comments? All right, thank you. I'll move on into section 2, communication. Number 1, communication 24-579. Angie Mulliken, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a public hearing for January 22nd, 2025 for the purpose of amending fiscal year 24-25 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue, which is a donation from the Stephen Tomasic Estate and Animal Shelter Remodeling. I apologize if I mispronounced that. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance pending the public hearing of January 22nd. Number 2, communication 24-582, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening on January 22nd, 2025 for the 4 cubic yard wheel loader for the Roads Division. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending the bid opening on January 22nd. Number 3, communication 25-13, Karen Malogny, Butte-Silver Bow Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on January 22nd, 2025 for the purpose of amending fiscal year 24-25 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue resulting from a contract with the Montana Department of Health and Human Services for the crisis division efforts. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending the January 22nd meeting. If you haven't figured out, January 22nd is a busy meeting. I'll move on to number 4, communication 25-14, Karen Malogny, Butte-Silver Bow Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on January 22nd, 2025 for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 24-25 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue resulting from one-time funds to supplement our family planning clinic. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance pending the January 26th or 22nd date. Number 5, communication 25-15, Karen Malogny, Butte-Silver Bow Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on January 22nd, 2025 for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 24-25 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue resulting from one-time funds to supplement our family planning clinic operations. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending the January 22nd date as well. Number 6, Communication 25-16, James Ouellette, ADA Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a presentation on January 15th, 25 to provide an update on the City County of Butte-Silver Bow self-evaluation and transition plan for 2025. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. At this time, I'd like to place on file communication number 2025-16.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's been a motion made and seconded to place communication 25-16 on file, being that the presentation was tonight. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Would the commissioners please vote? Is there any commissioner that wants to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
12 yea, 0 nay.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 7, Communication 25-17, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening on January 22nd for a compactor for the landfill. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance pending the January 22nd date. Number 8, Communication 25-18, Eric Hassler, Reclamation and Environmental Services Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for Chief Executive Gallagher to submit comments on EPA's proposed plan to amend the remedial action for the Butte Priority Soils Operable Unit, BIPSU proposed plan, October 2024. Mr. Hassler, I don't know if you have a staff update or anything. If not, I'll go directly to questions or comments from the commissioners. Seeing none. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on this communication? Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to add my 2 cents regarding the timeline. That I do agree that the timeline issue needs to be hit harder from the local government, and the EPA needs to be hit harder on it directly from the public. They have an obligation to consider all of the comments that get submitted to them, but 25 years is unacceptable, man. It just is. Like, in the meantime, we are harming human health. And so it can be done. It's just a question of willpower and resources. And I want to go on the record right now to say 25 years is way too long. And I would like to see this done in more like 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shea. Is there any other questions? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chairman Morgan. Thank you, everyone who spoke on this earlier. Thank you, Mr. Hassler, for being here. This may sound like I'm going after you. Trust me, I'm not. But I am disappointed about this. There's a lot of questions about this. I talked to numerous people about this the last few days. I was listening to a lot of people are very passionate about this. I get fairly passionate about it when I see a lot of the health effects and everything with this. With prolonged lead exposure, with prolonged chemical exposures and everything, I wonder how much of my own health and everything is affected by a lot of these levels and a lot of the cleanup efforts or lack thereof in the last 40 years that a lot of this has been going on. I know this is a specific portion of it, but the 25 years, when I read that, was a slap in the face, really. That's another 2 generations of people growing up in this community with the possibility of prolonged lead exposure. It leads to cancer. Check, been there, done that. It leads to heart disease and heart issues. Check. Been there, done that. It leads to other numerous health effects. I've lost many friends to cancer. I don't know if the environment of our community is responsible for some of that. Some people would say yes, some people would say no. The one thing I do know is the toxicity of our community is not helping anybody. And the sooner we hold the EPA's feet to the fire, the sooner we hold the government's feet to the fire, the sooner we hold British Petroleum and their partners' feet to the fire, the sooner we do these things, the better off our children will be, the better off our children's children and their children again will be. Nobody wants to see anybody suffering through these diseases and efforts that are affecting our community. And like I said, there's, depending on who you talk to, some people will say, yes, this is part of it, so others will say no. I remember when I first started on council, there was a presentation by a good friend of mine, Miss Barry, Stacy Barry, on some of these issues and the effects of it, of the toxicity in our community. And I keep going back to that and how she was attacked by numerous parties on some of this. So I'll start with saying that I do agree that with the Commissioner Shea that 25-year timeline, I could say that 10 would be understandable, possibly. I'd hate to see 10. I think that's way too long. I don't like the idea of Butte-Silver Bow employees doing a lot of this cleanup work. I think it should be hired out. I know it's going to cost more. I know that BP has the monies and they can afford a higher cost. And I know that doing it faster is going to cost more money. But again, we're talking about the health and livelihood of our friends, our family, our community members, and their children and their children's children. And as I stated in last week's meeting, those are the people who hold me responsible. Those are the people who put us here, and they're going to be number one priority in this. There's an awful lot of questions that was asked in your statement. I understood some of them I didn't really see. The language seemed fairly mild when I think about my experience, when I think about the friends I've lost, when I think about the prolonged cleanup, I get very frustrated. I get a little bit emotional sometimes. I know that my life will be cut short, and I know good friends of mine whose lives have been cut short. Like I said, what I believe is an awful lot of the toxicity in our community. I know that not all of, I know that this isn't, you're not responsible for it, but unfortunately, you're kind of on the hook for it. I don't like it. I get calls from people and it's like, well, hey, I didn't do it. And it's like, I know I'm at the downhill slope, and we all know where stuff rolls downhill, where it lands. So I would really like to see this letter, and I know I can't tell you to do it, and I know that I'll be writing a letter to the EPA and submitting that. I know that the Butte Watchdog Group will. I know that other people who I have talked to, Dr. Ray and others, will be writing letters to that. But I would like to see this. I'm pissed off when I read this. Not pissed off at you, but I'm pissed off by the lack of Butte-Silver Bowl holding these people's feet to the fire, so to say. You know, I think we owe it to our community to speed this process up as quickly as possible. We have 27 days from today before, actually, excuse me, 29 days from today before this is due. I know we have 1, 2, 3 meetings before this is due. I would like to see some of the time frame cleaned up if possible and other things, but thank you very much for responding. Thank you for bringing this to our attention and to the attention of Butte-Silver Bow. I know that you have the best interest of all of us at heart, but the time frame and other issues with this, the language could be a lot harsher. Is it the agency's intent to have a time frame associated with the interior dust and remedial action? It's like, instead of is the agency intent to have a time frame, it's like, what is your time frame? When are you going to fix this problem? We have people suffering in our community. They better have an intent to fix it. They better have intent to have a timeline a hell of a lot faster than 25 years, in my humble opinion. That's one of the questions. Another one here, the current criteria used for clean backfill materials allows for lead levels up to 100 mpkh. Will the proposed action levels change, require the update of this criteria? I'd like to see the same criteria that's the national average for lead cleanup. I know at one point in time, ours was 3 times higher than Anaconda. I don't know why Butte's being cleaned up at 1,200 and Anaconda was being cleaned up at 4. I don't know of any mystical force field that we have that protects us 3 times more than it does in Anaconda, but it seems fairly ridiculous to me. I think all of these should be made the same. So I would appreciate it if some of these issues that were brought up by Mr. Barrett, by Mr. Patrice, and others were looked at and taken into consideration, and some of the languages of this letter was restructured. And with that being said, I would make a motion to continue to hold communication 25-18 until such time as that is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. There is a motion on the floor to hold communication 2025-18 in the Committee of the Whole. I'm sure there's comments on that question. A couple of things, I just want to remind everybody there is the motion on the floor to do that. This communication would be held anyway, but we'll follow through with that motion. To clarify a couple of things, just so this body as well as the public is aware, this communication must be received to the EPA or sent off by February 14th, which is a Friday. As we sit here today on January 15th, as everybody knows, it's a Committee of the Whole. Next week we have a regular meeting. Then on the 29th we have a Committee of the Whole. And then the last regular meeting, not the last one, but the next one is February 5th. In order for this body to have a letter ready to go by the 14th, we have to take final action on this on Wednesday, February 5th. So even though we do have the 14th as a date, we can't authorize the chief executive to sign this any date past that unless there's a special meeting called to just do that one, but there is a communication on the agenda. So keep that in mind. We don't have until the 12th to fully adopt this because that's a Committee of the Whole meeting. The other comment that I would make, and one of the beauties of holding a commissioner seat is the ability to fix problems. And it's always been my stance to fix problems because it's easy to just bring up the problems. And I would say that if there's anybody, commissioner-wise, that has a comment that would like to see that added to the letter or addressed in a regard, figure out a way to get that comment to Mr. Hassler and then have him, put that in the letter or work together to see if you can facilitate that to be in the letter. Because at the end of the day, it's very difficult for a body of 12 to write a letter because we all have different opinions on things. So if we can get comments and then get a red line strike through back to this body next week, or not next week, we can talk about it in the next committee of the whole. That's pretty helpful because as we sit here and we talk about things, it's hard to visualize what that would look like in a letter. And so maybe some comments for us to start to look at or to think of that we can put in this letter is how do we address the 25-year question? Is that, come up with something that we can have. And so if somebody has some recommendations, please move forward with that. Is there anything on the question? Anything else? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. I'm just going to state that I agree with everything that's said. And, I guess the 25-year thing, that's crazy. Why can't we get questions answered that are asked? Why? That's one thing I got. But to move on, we've been going through this so long, Remember we had that nice resolution that Michelle and I and Chairman Frederickson time worked on? It got torpedoed. People are fed up. Like, if you're new on the commission, it's kind of new, but if you've been on here like as long as I have or Michelle been here, and we've worked on these things, we're getting frustrated talking on deaf ears. It's time we firm it up a little bit, I, for one, I'm tired of getting pushed around by the EPA and ARCO being in bed together. And I say that out loud. I mean, we're against the blade. I just think we got to get a lot firmer with them. We got to state what we want to do. And, I hate to make comments that sound weird, but, they're giving us $20 million to build a real nice facility over there. Everyone's happy in the community. Everybody's all excited about this new thing. Then all of a sudden they drop this bomb letter on us, 25 years. I ain't gonna live 25 years, We aren't gonna see that stuff. So every time we do stuff, and even people, this ain't coming from me. This is what people stop in my office and talk about. What are we giving up for that center? Well, I don't know what we're giving up. Everyone's happy. I thought we were getting it as a gift, a grant. Now all of a sudden we're getting this letter from the EPA, that, all these questions, and they don't want to answer any of our questions. And a lot of us think that we're just writing letters on deaf ears. As the chief
Commissioner Fisher, hold on one second. Commissioner Anderson, can you please keep it down? Sorry, Commissioner Fisher.
I think it's time for Chief Executive Gallagher and Director Hassler and some other people to get firm and stay, we're tired of this. It's been 40 years, and I get at the health thing, and thank God for Evan, and thank God for Moose Patrice being up here, and Fritz Daly's always around, and I agree with you guys, you're working hard at it, but we're not getting nowhere. So I'm just asking, just like with the other stuff, let's start making it happen. Let's just quit being compliant. Let's argue. Let's fight the fight and win this battle. So I concur with everything about the health and everything, because we've all lost a lot of good friends, and the lead level is eccentric, to leave it at that. 25 years, that's eccentric. And the last question is, why can't EPA answer our questions? Why won't they answer our questions? Why does it always take 6 weeks to answer a question? We go through directors. We sat here at the table with the EPA director from District 8, all of us, a year ago. Nothing ever came of that. It was just took 3 hours out of my day to come out and visit. Michelle visited with them. We made good comments. We never heard back from the people.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Chief Executive Gallagher, do you have anything?
May I?
Thank you. Chairman Morgan, Commissioners, I just want to just speak to this a little bit. We brought this communication to you to do exactly what we're doing, to have conversation about what the letter says and stuff. Nowhere in our letter do we say that we accept 25 years in there. We have in there, and Can we be stronger? Yeah, I think we can be stronger. But that's the rationale behind what we did here, to bring it to you so that we could have communication, so we could have this conversation and go forward as we move forward with the EPA. The comment period is the way that they work, federal regulation, federal law on this. We can't change that. I know Evan has suggested that we send them these questions to them ahead of time and request for them to send them back. They're going to deny that. It's not the process. They won't allow us to send questions to address the questions in the public comment period. It just is not the process that goes. So we're trying to fit the process. We're trying to give the public comment the firmest place we go. And to have anyone say that Butte-Silver Bow is doing this to be a jobs program, or that we're in the back pocket of ARCO, or that we're not loyal to our community, is a stab in the back. And Commissioner Fisher, I don't disagree with you, but it's almost like saying that every chief executive that's sat in here has not put the best interests of Butte-Silver Bow at heart, or the other commissioners. There was a mistake in there. We weren't named a PRP in 2020. We were named a PRP a long time ago when we first got put in on this. So there's some comments in there that are not accurate. We don't agree 25 years is accurate, but there has to be the ability to do the work. And we're not saying Butte-Silver Bow. We acknowledge Butte-Silver Bow cannot do this work when the level goes to 175. The other piece to that is 175 is the lowest in the nation. We're lower than Anaconda. I've been fighting the fight saying, why weren't we as low as Anaconda at 400? Now we're the lowest in the country. We're the first one that's been proposed at this level. We're fighting for it as hard as anybody else. The people that have worked for Butte-Silver Bow are giving everything that they have as well. So for anybody to make the assumption or assertion to us that we are helping out Atlantic Richfield for whatever purpose, that would never happen. That would never happen. That would never happen with the people who work for Butte-Silver Bow. I work with them every day. We work with WET. They're an environmental engineering firm that works this there. It's helping us on this. We went through this. We go through with a fine-tooth comb and try to address what we can do. But the ability, did many of you guys get Dr. Ray's questions today and what he was asking? There's a lot of questions. How many companies can come in and do this work? Is there enough clean fill around in this area? What is? There's scientific data that has to happen throughout this process. And we're going to push as absolute hard as we can. But for anyone to look at me and say that we are in the back pocket of British Petroleum or Atlantic Richfield, I take an incredible amount of offense to that, because it strikes a chord. I'm a Butte guy through and through, always have been. My loyalty is to this community, and that's why I took this job. But I'll fight for it. But we also have to have realistic expectations of what we can get done and how we can do it scientifically. And the people of Butte-Silver Bow and the workers of Butte-Silver Bow are working their butts off to do it. And so I just want to make that point. We're doing the work, and we're not doing it for a jobs program. And it's been stated by a number of people that saying that's what we're trying to do for the Department of Reclamation. That's absolutely false, and I would never allow it to do it. We're doing it to try to clean up Butte and do the best thing for people, for the health issues of it. But we're doing our best work. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Again, there is a motion on the floor to hold this communication in the committee of the whole. On the question, Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. I guess I would like Eric, if he could, explain. I also disagree with you, Mr. Gallagher. The finger's being pointed at Butte-Silver Bow. they're holding this for jobs and this and that. There's very little of this is done that's by Butte-Silver Bow anyway. I mean, most of this is all contracted out. Could you kind of explain that to us, Eric, on what we do and what all the contractors do, please?
Chairman Morgan, Commissioner Callahan. That is correct. All of the soils work are contracted out with local contractors throughout our community. The attics that we do the remedial activity are done with in-house crews, but that was because we could not find the specialized services amongst private contractors to do that kind of work. So we had to train within in order to be able to conduct that kind of remediation. Sampling is conducted by a multitude of agencies, including Butte-Silver Bow, where we go to the residences and work with the property owners and obtain the residential sampling for the most part, but not completely. So you're 100% correct in that we do not do all of this work in regards to the programs that we operate. A lot of it is contracted out. So, and I want to kind of talk in regards to the comment letter itself. I keep hearing questions or seem to be an issue, but this is a way for us to pose those questions and ensure that the community gets to see the answers to them. And they're valuable questions on what is truly the scope, what does this look like going forward. This is a monumental shift in remedial activities in Butte, and we need to know what that looks like, what kind of impacts we may be looking at as a municipality. JP hit on, Chief Executive Gallagher, sorry, hit on that. I mean, some of the main questions are, is it feasible due to the fact, can we get materials here? If you can't get them here, what are the time implications of bringing them in from somewhere else? I mean, I think these are all valuable questions on trying to frame what this looks like in the long run. And I would like to reiterate the fact, I don't see anywhere in that letter where we're supporting 25 years. I mean, we agree, 25 years is not long enough. But to come out, I mean, it's too long, sorry. But to come out and say, I'd like to strike that. It's too long, but to come out and say a very distinct time period, we want to know it's feasible. We need to know. We want to know that it's truthful in what that is being told. And some of those questions that we have posed in there are necessary to be answered to see what the scope of the whole project is, if you will. And right now, we don't know that. We don't have the answers to those questions. And we have some questions and concerns in there around the boundary adjustment that they're making. They left out a portion of our community. We want to know why you left out a portion of our community. Is it justifiable? Let us know. If not, we really want this area to be looked at as equally as the rest of our community as a whole. So I'll answer any questions that anybody has, but thank you for the contractor question. All soils, again, are contracted out through local contractors. A lot of that has to do with what do you do with those staff in the wintertime, and it gets the other companies involved. But when it came to the attics, we tried. We tried the contracted services route, and the ones that did try to go through training eventually just said, sorry, we're no longer interested in that kind of work. So the choice was to develop crews that could incorporate that work and complete that task.
Thank you, Mr. Hassler. Is there any other questions? Commissioner O'Leary. Next button.
There we go. A couple things. I just wanted to state for the record, I'm in the business of real estate, and I have a lot of rentals, and we've interacted with Butte-Silver Bow staff, all of the contractors that they work with, and with both attic remediation and yard remediation, and it's been nothing but professional. I've always really appreciated the Butte-Silver Bow staff with the remediation stuff. All the comments I've gotten about this from constituents have been to the same perspective as everybody else here. 25 years is just unreasonable. I think everybody agrees on that. But I do understand that there are constraints on how fast this can go, and I would just love to hear, if you can talk a little bit about what those constraints are. Is it staffing? Is it materials? And I guess generally speaking, how many properties have been tested already? How many qualify, first of all, to be tested? What percentage of those have already been tested and what percent we think are likely to come up hot. If that's something we can talk about, I know I'm putting you on the spot with numbers here, but you know, there are constraints here. I think we all recognize there are constraints, and you know, what is realistic? What should we realistically expect here? If we all agree 25 years is too much, what is the realistic in between number?
Commissioner O'Leary, the only thing I would mention is before we ask Mr. Hassler to remember to answer that, the communication that's before us tonight is what we're talking about, so that might be going off scope a little bit. So, Mr. Hassler, if you can answer that as it relates to the communication, that would be great. There's some questions you can ask at another opportunity.
Chairman Morgan, Commissioner O'Leary, I won't be able to get into specific numbers. I can't pull those things right off the top of my head. But I think the biggest constraints that we see are within the questions that are embodied in this document is, what are we looking at for replacement materials? We've kind of exhausted replacement materials within the Summit Valley. We've been at this a long time. There's been some large-scale reclamation that has ate up a large volume of dirt. In regards to Commissioner Anderson's comment on wanting to see the national average use for replacement soils, that's why we're asking that question, is now you have, with the change in the action levels for removal, you have necked the delta down between clean material to what is contaminated to about nothing. So that question is posed in, is it going to make it more difficult to obtain EPA certified clean fill materials going forward? I mean, they all have value, and that's the direction. I think another limitation is repository space. We all know repositories are a very contentious topic, and the repository we're working in today has a limited life expectancy. I mean, it's the nature of the game. If you remove it, you have to have somewhere to take it, and like I said, repositories have been contentious and a very heavy lift to try to get through an approval process. We heard opportunity ponds, but this municipality made a decision several years ago that our contamination is our problem. We weren't going to take that to another community and say, here you go. So we want to, that should be reposed within the place that it was generated. That is a personal opinion, not the opinion of anybody else, but I truly feel that. It's, why would we take this to another community when we can find a viable option to repose it here? And we have areas that are scientifically suitable. So staffing is definitely going to be a constraint, pending how things go. I want to hit on the hot rate a little bit as you hit within, we have data, a lot of data within the original BPSOU boundary. We've been through multiple iterations of this project just in my tenure here with sampling methodologies, but with the most current, we see about 40% of the soils exceed the 1200. We have ran numbers down to the 175, and that jumps up considerably. There again, it goes to a question within the EPA, within our document to the EPA, is they have within the proposed plan, their expectation is about 60% to exceed the 175. Our historic data is showing something different. That's why we pose that question, is again, to try to frame what the scope of work truly is moving forward so that we can try to gear towards that and know what the impacts will be to our community up front.
Thank you, Mr. Hassler. Any other questions or comments? Any follow-up, Commissioner O'Leary? No.
Commissioner Morgan?
Mr. Hassler? Yes.
Commissioner O'Leary, feel free to give me a call and we can go over numbers and specifics at any time. So that goes to all members of the council at all times.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. We do have a motion on the floor. It's really not needed in the sense we could just hold it in abeyance, but if you'd want to proceed with that motion, I'm okay with it. So
Either way.
we'll continue to hold this in abeyance, you know, as just like what we do on the other communications as well. So
Perfect. We'll
continue to hold 25-18 in the committee of the whole. Is that okay with you, Commissioner Shea? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hassler. Moving on to communication number 25-24. Jim Keenan, Water Plant Superintendent, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening on January 22nd, 2025 for supplying chemicals to be used by the Butte-Silver water and wastewater treatment plants at the Ridgewaters Water Park. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance pending the January 22nd date. Next item on tonight's agenda is any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. Now's the opportunity for a member of the public to speak on any matter that's not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded to adjourn. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.